India's opportunities, first thing is to reduce the dependence on US dollar. And we have, now people say, we have 600, now $560 billion as a reserve. And we take it as a great, and the Pakistanis will say, oh, we don't have anything, $9 billion, we don't have money to pay back. That's true. But we are paying a price for that. We are paying a price for that because this dollars, part of it, because part of it is in gold, part of it is in other currency, a good part of it in dollars, is put in the US Treasury in the form of Treasury bonds. Let's say they are giving, because earlier the interest rate was zero interest rate in America because of quantitative easing. I'm using all these technical jargon. But simple language is that they give you an interest on deposits. Supposing they give you now a 2% interest on your dollar reserves in the form of bonds. But if their inflation is 4%, you are losing 2% of value. And now the inflation there is 6%, 7%. So depending on the inflation in the United States, you are losing the real value of the dollar that you are holding. That's the price that you are paying for a bad weather situation. So it's a price that you are willing to forgo for reducing your vulnerability. Because every country felt very vulnerable during the financial crisis, Asian crisis, then the great financial crisis. So as a precaution, they are holding on. And also if there is an international currency without the dollar, unattached to any country, you don't need to hold so much because there is a system. You can approach it when there's a deficit. You can borrow money, pay an interest, just like our banks do. If they have excess money, they put it in the reserve system of the Reserve Bank of India and they pay them in interest. That's called the repo rate, no? That's why the bank policies change. And if they want money, either they can interbank transfer or the Reserve Bank of India will give them at an interest. So as the basic principle is the same. So how do we do that? What we are now doing is we are trying to internationalize the rupee and engaging in rupee trade with other countries. Interestingly, because Russia is expelled from the dollar financial system, they are willing to do that. And they are also giving you a discount for their oil, which is also to make it more favorable to the friendly country. And you pay in rupees, they pay in rubles, which means you can have account in their country for your bank and their country bank will have an account here and they will clear it. But it works perfectly well when your export and imports match. If it doesn't match, if Russia has more rupees because it exports more, that's the thing, we import less, then what do they do with the excess rupee? Other countries are not able to accept it, unlike dollar. So that's the reserve nature. So India is saying, okay, if you hold excess rupee, we will give you treasury bills, we will give you an interest rate. Interest adjusted to our inflation so that you don't lose in real terms. But this is a limited arrangement. That's what China is now doing with Russia. Russia is doing with India. China is now going to do with Saudi Arabia. There are several. But China is also pushing its currency as an international reserve currency, which IMF has accepted because of their economic strength. So legally, other countries can hold yuan. But then it becomes just like a shift from dollar to yuan. It's also one country. So that's why they are not got so many countries to subscribe to that. Partially they do because we are doing more business with China. So we need to have an international independent reserve currency system. And whether until that political time comes, I think countries will continue to do the second best solutions of bilateral or regional arrangements, things like that, they will continue to do. Of course, long-term challenge for India is, we have to cooperate with other BRICS countries. Our border issue with China, if it comes in the way of our economic cooperation, then the possibility will be limited. Then your room for maneuver will be limited. So as Jagadi says, jagada, no jagada. You will have to have some basic cooperation and both have to be realistic enough. Whether that will take place or not, that is a big elephant in the room and we have to wait for that. India will also have to cultivate its trade with other developing countries, because only when you can purchase more from others, you can give more. So basically, your dependence on the developed countries have to be reduced. To that happen, we should also extend whatever technology we have to them. We should also probably also, in a limited way, although we are giving, but that's very insignificant, development finance to them. Like China is doing, but China can do it because it has got so much of surplus in their current account, $3 trillion. So they started this Belt and Road Initiative. It's basically development finance being given to other countries so that other countries will buy more from China, because those projects will demand machinery and other raw materials which will come from China. So it will also boost Chinese trade, because China is financing that project. This is what happens even earlier. The Japanese or the Koreans are giving you the K-rail. It's not they are not giving you for free. They will also price the rail. So the entire money will go back to them in terms of the railways and other consultancies and all that. So that's a different kind of thing. This I'm just reiterating that why did the non-Western countries, not a single one, went along with USA in their sanctions against Russia or in their overall economic position in international economic order? Because most of these countries have a history of being discriminated against. Not, of course, Western colonialism is not the product of USA, but they were part of the European civilization. But even after the Second World War, many governments were thwarted by the United States. Many countries, they just under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, they just attacked Iraq, hanged the president of a country and got away with it, completely destroyed a peasant society like Afghanistan and just ran away after that. In Vietnam that happened. So in many, Yugoslavia was destroyed and made into 6 other countries. So they just lack the moral fiber to say that you be with us in this war of Russia against Ukraine. So other countries saying it's your war, it's your problem. As Jayashankar put it, it's a European problem. When there is a European problem, you put it as a world problem. When there is a world problem, you don't take it as your problem. So you are basically, he is saying you are harvesting what you were sowing the other day. So that, and this is very important, although we are all talking about economics, behind economics there is also muscle power. And if you compare NATO is a sum of all the US, France, Italy, UK, Japan, Turkey and other countries. So if you do that, look at Russia alone, look at Russia, China together, look at Russia, China, India together. In most of these things there is parity or even more than parity. And Russia alone can match the NATO power in many respects, except military aircraft, whether it's nuclear power or it's tanks, aircraft, submarines. So that is one reason why the Americans are not entering the Ukraine war directly, because that will then become a major confrontation. Will the decline of the West help the rest as represented by BRICS and BRICS Plus? It's yes and no. The simple economics is that Western countries represent much of exports and imports and consumption because the per capita income is high. If they are weakened and their rate of growth is slow and emerging economies is very high, if they go through a recession, then the demand for oil, demand for basic commodities like steel and other things will go down. The international price of these commodities will be less. And countries like India, China and other developing countries will pay less of an import bill. And that will become a cause for their economic growth. So somebody is losing, then somebody is gaining, because the somebody gaining has already built up the capacity, unlike earlier. That's what I showed, the shift of the GDP. So it could be, and in my own non-economic, highly biased, personalized thinking, I think decline of Europe will be a boon for Asia. because the Asian demand will go up. Already Asian capacity to produce is high. So nobody has to really be sad about if the Europe declines or European economy. But American case is slightly different because they still produce some of the very advanced technologies and ICT software systems and all that. So one doesn't really know how it is going to affect. It might moderate the growth, but I think still if it reduces the consumption demand, then that slack will be picked up by the growing economies. Or it could become weaker because financial systems will be weaker, development finance will be less, the flow of portfolio finance will be less, the flow of foreign direct investment will be less. But in my view, except very small states, the big economies are not dependent on foreign direct investment. I don't have an example where a country has developed by foreign direct investment. You tell me if there is one. Including South Korea, although so much aligned to the United States, much of the South Korean investment came from within their own domestic savings and investment. And that's the lesson East Asia gives. Well, India's opportunity is a growing economy with a large domestic market emerging as a digital power. Declining West could mean lower prices, that I already said, strong and growing trading connections, because we also have niche markets. For example, we are now much more well integrated with the Middle East, thanks to Kerala also, because a lot of our labor is there. So you have a diaspora market. You can get your banana chips, you can get your Malayalam films, you can get your newspapers earlier than you get here, or the best fish. And that's market integration, no? A lot of exports and imports. They also send money. And UAE has emerged as one of the major trading partners of India. So if you look at India's external trade, export and import, majority of the trade is outside of USA and Europe. USA-Europe remains important, around 35% together, but the 65% is outside these two trading areas, which is very important, which was not the case 30 years ago. So that's what could emerge as a modern service providing economy, because ICT, like UPI services, these are all, the Americans are also looking at. The Visa and MasterCard are worried because the use of these cards have gone down. You have to pay for them, no? If you get a credit card, you pay a fees to the bank, part of it goes to the credit card issuing. Also, every transaction the merchant has also to pay. But if you use UPI, nobody pays. So the service has been made easy by the national corporation, whatever is it, credit card corporation that we have created. So now many countries are looking at such technological softwares. Emerge as a hub for higher education, modern traditional healthcare, but those are matters of detail. But the big opportunity is in the green economy, if you are serious about it. If you are not serious about it, you are persisting with your coal culture, which is a high energy building construction, concrete culture, then you don't have much of an option. But if you are willing to innovate on all these things, there's a big market waiting out there. And that's a major. Of course, you need more investment for that. But more than investment, you also need more determination. You cannot say, like some of our political leaders say, come what may, we will implement the project even if it is against the environment. That's not democracy. That's not democracy. It makes no sense from an environmental point of view. If you don't heed to the environment, it will give you back like COVID. And maybe like in the form of floods that we went through. And you can't still find out what reason that we had to go through such a devastating flood in 2018. So it will be a random occurrence of a kind that you cannot even predict. So there is an opportunity as well as a threat. That means if you don't heed it, it's a threat. But if you heed it, you can manage. One of the biggest challenges for India is, if you look at the BRICS, India is one of the weakest countries in terms of fundamentals of human development. It's not just in per capita income. India has the lowest per capita income, but that will grow, because if you are growing at 6%, you don't have to be worried too much. But look at an indicator like life expectancy. It's only second after South Africa. Others are much ahead. Average years of schooling, the lowest, 6.7. HDI, It's a summation of all these 6.3, which means your internal strength, you must have enough boost. I am a, what is it, Complan boy. And you have to say that collectively. Because if you are not strong and stand on your own, if you have so much of deprivation and poverty, nobody is going to respect you in the international arena, even if you have technologies to give, even if you have your smart foreign ministers and all that. To some extent it can, for a short while it can take care of. But fundamentally, why China is respected is that China has taken care of its basic problems of poverty, underdevelopment, and widespread deprivation. You look at the statistics of multidimensional poverty, in China it's less than 1%, just as is in Kerala, but not in India. It's 27% in India, which is one of the highest among countries. So that's a major challenge. Then you have tough political challenges, and two tough political challenges are how do you deal with your border issue with China and Pakistan. Pakistan is also important because it can, it may not be able to function just like China in dominating world stage, but it can create problems, both moral and otherwise. You can change anything in foreign affairs, but not your neighbor. So you have to live with these two countries, and you have to have a more realistic policies. I'll end by that and just sum up by saying, although we might feel excited about the possibilities provided by a very tragic situation as Ukraine, things were taking place even before in terms of deglobalization that has been well documented. But a point has reached when the world has to think differently and move towards a more satisfactory solution for all countries. The best forum is the United Nations. Whether that will happen or not, it will depend on BRICS and the BRICS Plus initiatives. If they take that initiative, then it will be very difficult for the West to oppose that. And thirdly, while we have opportunities, we also have threats. And one of the threats is our internal economic and social strength. I'll end by that, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.